Hi, I'm indie fantasy author Melinda Kucsera, and in this episode, Shannon Holly is joining me to talk about her book, The Door to Trilesk. So welcome, and let's talk about The Door to Trilesk. And where is Trilesk? Why is there a door to it? Who's going through it? Is anybody going through it? Many questions.
A random door standing there. No. So my book, The Door to Trilesk, is kind of like a Star Trek meets Narnia fantasy adventure book. And it features 20-year-old artist Kate Jones, who is driven to visit her missing, estranged aunt's property after overhearing her mom's plan to have the ancestral home sold off. So once there, she comes up with a plan to use her aunt's amazing art space in the house behind her mom's back to help her create art pieces she desperately needs for an important show that could change Kate's life. However, as she spends time in the house that almost seems to be aware, memories of a forgotten magical childhood summer surface, as well as forgotten friends. She searches for answers, but instead she finds her aunt's hidden journal and is transported to a fantastic tales of danger-filled adventure, along with discovering a family secret. That Kate's family comes from a long line of travelers who can move through doors only they can see, among other secrets that I won't tell.
Oh, wow.
When a powerful creature rips a doorway open to Kate's world, she is shocked to discover her aunt may be alive, held captive in another dimension for secrets that could end all worlds, and Kate is the key to saving them all.
Wow.
Yes.
There's a lot going on there. So wait, you said it's Narnia meets Star Trek. How is it?
Yeah.
I get Narnia. We've got the door. It's not a wardrobe, but you're going, and then there's a portal.
Yes.
How is it like Star Trek?
So when Kate reads the journal about her aunt's adventures, some of those adventures are out in space. So in other planets, other dimensions, there's like a space chase scene. So it has the Star Trek vibe there.
Okay. So in that ship, is it powered by magic or technology?
Technology. So It's a bit of, so it does have like some sci-fi elements to it.
No, that's neat. Because I was like, wait, I love Star Trek. I mean, I liked Narnia, but like I read it as an adult. I didn't find the book until I was like an adult. So like, it's not the same thing reading it for the first time when you're like in your 20s or 30s versus reading it when you're a kid.
8 or 9. Right.
Yeah. I didn't find it when I was 8 or 9. So I didn't read it then. So it's not the same thing. But when you're like, I was like, the Next Generation came out in like the 80s and I was a kid, and then it went into the 90s, or it came out in the 90s. I don't remember. I remember I was young. So like that's different. That's like a whole different thing. So
right. So it's like basically a story within a story, because her aunt's journal actually describes all of her adventures on these other dimensions.
Gotcha.
Right.
That's pretty neat.
Yeah.
Should we go to an excerpt?
I would love to do an excerpt. So this is The Door to Trilesk, and I'm going to read the first chapter. It is a short book. It is a quick read, but it is engaging. Chapter 1. Kate gripped the steering wheel with white knuckles as a single drop of sweat dripped down the middle of her rigid back. Her muscles tensed with the effort to contain the panic that had driven her here, to her estranged missing aunt's house. Like a wild beast, it reared up and beat against her breast. Now, now, now. She dropped her forehead onto the steering wheel and groaned. None of this made sense. What was she even doing here? If her mom found out where she was, well, Kate knew how badly that would end. After all, what did she care what her mom did with it? It was just a house. Kate scoffed at the thought. Yeah, just a house that had been in her mom's family for centuries. Just a house her mom and aunt had grown up in. Just a house Kate had never been allowed near except for one summer years ago. Kate exhaled sharply. just a house she had no memory of, not a single one. Sorry, that was my cat. So if her mom wanted to get rid of it, it shouldn't matter to her, yet somehow it did. Somehow this place pulled her back to it with every fiber of her being, ever since she discovered her mom's plans. Somehow something mattered enough to drive her here, knowing the trouble it would cause if she was found out. She sighed again. There was still time to go home. She could start the car and turn it around and try to ignore the frantic foreboding, but she knew she couldn't. She needed to see what was calling her back. Kate gathered her courage, opened the door, and stepped out. She looked up and took in the house and yard that exuded her aunt's energy. From the house's paint color, dark purple fading into a lighter purple on top, to the metal art sculptures and concrete faces her aunt made that were scattered throughout the lush flower garden and left no room for mere grass, to the meandering stone path that ended under the giant canopy of an ancient oak tree. At least she thought it was an oak. She had never really seen an oak, or any tree that big. The massive tree branches brushed the sky, and Kate swore the tree whispered as the leaves rustled. Smells and colors exploded across the lush garden, and birds launched through the foliage, sweet trills of happiness bursting from their beaks. In fact, everywhere 20-year-old Kate looked, plants and animals alike seemed, well, happy. But that was impossible, wasn't it? Tiny voices everywhere seemed to welcome her home. Insects played their wings like cellos. Hummingbirds darted to and fro, and other colorful birds Kate couldn't identify added to the music with their warbles. A cloud of butterfly wings flitted like soft kisses over her cheeks. Home, her heart sang. Home, the plants rustled with the wind. Home, rejoiced the animals like a page torn from a child's storybook. Kate felt wetness on her cheeks and swiped away tears that had fallen unnoticed as her body recognized the longing well before her head acknowledged that she had missed this place something fierce. Kate blew out a breath and tried to shake the spell. She spotted a trio of concrete frogs by the front porch that seemed almost familiar and made her way over. Instinctively, she pushed the middle frog's head down. Its mouth sprang open and a tongue unfurled to reveal an intricate, old, tarnished brass key. Surprised and half expecting it to be wet, Kate grabbed the key and somehow knew it would fit the front door. Such a small thing, really, yet the thought of another family touching it, using it to get into her aunt's house, filled her with such sorrow. She shook her head to dispel the thoughts and walked up to the front door. She inserted the key and felt the tumblers turn and push the door inward. Everything was eerily still, as if the house was holding its breath, waiting for what exactly? Her glorious return? More likely the stillness was because no one had lived here since her aunt disappeared a year ago. Kate snorted at the ridiculousness and stepped across the threshold. She closed the door and marveled as the sun splashed colors over the carpet through the colored glass mural in the door that depicted a mermaid in the water. The craftsmanship was extraordinary, down to the small details that made it appear as if the mermaid were actually the rest of the front room and guessed it was a parlor. It seemed all old houses had parlors. This particular one contained sofas and chairs set up for conversations and entertaining, with lots of natural light coming from all the windows. Pieces from her aunt's travel filled the room, each with a unique story to tell of how and when it had been acquired. A framed picture caught Kate's eye, and she wandered over and picked it up. The camera had caught a much younger Esmeralda, mid-laugh, looking directly into the lens. She looked so vivacious. Kate's hands trembled as she set the picture down. The knowledge that she would never be able to ask her aunt what she was laughing about, or who took the picture, or why the memory was so important that her aunt had the picture framed, washed over her. Her aunt had been such a unique person, never afraid to be her true self, confident and happy with who she was. Kate looked forward to her aunt's visits on birthdays and holidays when she would bask in that energy, so different from her mom's, for at least a few hours. As the years went by, she saw less and less of her as her aunt's travels took her away more and more. Kate vividly remembered the last time her aunt came to see her. It was 2 years ago on Kate's 18th birthday. She had been so wrapped up in her friends and becoming an adult, she blew off all her aunt's attempts to talk to her. After all, at that point, Kate barely knew her. Everything was fine until she got her aunt looking at her with such sorrow. The grief gripped Kate's heart so tight she could barely breathe. She moved to talk to her aunt privately, but each time her mom appeared, making conversations difficult, until finally it was too late. Her aunt left and the feeling faded into the background, making Kate doubt the whole encounter. Questions gnawed at her, but Kate ignored them and turned her attention back to the room. She took a few steps toward the center of the room, intent on exploring the rest of the house, but stopped in her tracks as her aunt's presence wrapped around her like a warm hug. Gone was the stillness. Instead, it felt like her aunt just popped into the kitchen for a moment to make some of her homemade lavender iced tea. Lavender iced tea? Kate shook her head, confused. She'd never had lavender iced tea, yet she tasted the subtle flavors of mint and lavender on her tongue. A bit of tea time, Aunt Esmeralda marched into the room, followed by an 8-year-old Kate. Her aunt carried a tray holding a large French press stuffed with lavender and mint steeped in hot water. Tall glasses clinked with ice, and a plain white plate laced with delicate blue flowers was piled high with Kate's favorite lemon cookies. They both wore explorer outfits complete with binoculars, boots, and hats, all smudged with dirt. The trick is to steep it for 10 minutes, not 1 minute more or less, her aunt stated as she set the tray down. Lavender's my favorite, 8-year-old Kate quipped. What about hibiscus? You said that was your favorite yesterday. Well, it was my favorite yesterday. Today, my favorite's lavender. Lucky for us, we have our own unlimited supply of lavender, Aunt Esmeralda tickled Kate's nose with the tiny purple flower. Past and present Kate giggled, and Kate's eyes grew wide. She remembered this. She remembered all the iced teas they would make from her aunt's herb garden. Hibiscus, lavender, chocolate mint, orange thyme, along with exotic-sounding herbs with the most amazing flavors that made the best iced tea. How could she have forgotten that? She watched her younger self fling her little body into her aunt's arms in a fierce hug. I hope this never ends, Aunt Esme. I love you, little Kate whispered. She strained to hear her aunt's reply, but it was too soft. Their laughter trailed away like a puff of smoke as the vision faded. She stood rooted to the spot, willing it back. A slow burn between her shoulder blades brought her back to the present, and she stretched her neck down and turned her head to the side. How could she have forgotten this? What other memories were locked inside her? Kate let her feet lead her further inside the house and ignored the flicker of fear at the thought of her mom finding out she was here. This was worth the tongue lashing, or at least that's what she kept telling herself. It was one thing to think about it and quite another to experience it. Kate winced and pushed the thought away. It was only for one day, and her mom would never find out. Kate ventured down a hallway as it opened up through a large stone archway. She stopped as her eyes took in the room that opened before her. It was a solarium like the ones you would see in the old movies that was almost as large as the rest of the house. Glass walls soared above her to merge with the glass ceiling, each pane separated with black iron scrollwork that must have taken weeks, even months to finish. The floors were inlaid with patterned cream, green, and gold tiles placed to create the look of flowers sprinkled throughout the floor. Lush tropical plants, both large and small, filled the space. Here and there, cozy couches and chairs created bubbles of private oases, ripe for reading a good book or just getting lost in one's own thoughts. Kate's feet instinctively carried her along until they stopped in a corner of the room occupied by an empty easel that sat expectantly. A beige canvas lay underneath to protect the floors, an art piece unto itself with splashes and drops of overlying hues, vibrant reds, blues, and purples, soft pastels and pinks and lilacs, stark blacks and whites. Jars littered both surfaces of the two tables that flanked the easel. Some were filled with brushes from finite to large house painters' types, others filled with what had been watered-down paint, now dried, cracked, and clinging to life on the sides of the jar. A stack of white canvases leaned against the wall. Forgotten and forlorn, this nook spoke to Kate about all the endless possibilities. Her fingers twitched, eager to grab a paintbrush and start creating. Joy, followed by chagrin, made Kate squirm. How had she not known her aunt was an artist? Had anyone else in her family painted? She sighed. She would probably never know. Her mom never talked about what little family they had, and if it had to do with art, forget it. Her mom never said anything that might encourage Kate's career choice. An alarm halted Kate's thoughts, and she swiped her phone to silence it, leaving a smear of sweat. It was almost time for her meeting with Morgan. Kate's hands trembled at the prospect. Morgan Lovejoy was the successful owner of an art gallery that hosted an Ono, one night only, exhibit that drew collectors from around the world. Along with the top artists, Morgan would choose a lucky local artist to showcase at the event, and Kate desperately wanted to be the one chosen for the event. She headed towards the front of the house, and her stomach tightened in knots. This was the part she hated the most, meeting face to face, letting some stranger judge her work, exposing her soul to wounds by the slightest frown or offhand comments the other person never remembers, but in turn scars. It was brutal. And talking about herself and her work, it made her feel like a child playing dress up in oversized fancy clothes, not like the adult she had been for 2 years. She tried living by the adage, fake it till you make it, but sometimes faking that confidence grew heavy. When would she feel more like an adult? When would she feel powerful, confident, fully herself? Not some pint-sized version who, to be honest, had no belief in herself right now. A gentle breeze wrapped itself around Kate and followed her to her car. She opened the door but froze when she heard her name whispered in the wind, Kate. She shook her head and plopped into the car. Nerves were getting the better of her. It had been a crazy, emotional day, more so than she could have ever foreseen at the start of the day. She just needed to get through this meeting, and then she could melt into a pajama puddle at home. A few hours later, her roommate and best friend pounced on Kate as she walked in the front door of their apartment. What happened? How'd it go? You haven't answered any of my texts. I mean, I know you're horrible at texting back, but I thought you would have made an exception for this. Tell me everything. Was she amazed by your talent? Maggie fired at Kate, barely giving her time to respond. Kate shrugged her shoulders, letting her portfolio slide to the floor. She was not amazed. She said my pieces had promised, but were missing something. What could possibly be missing from your work? It's incredible, Maggie asked with a frown. Authenticity. Kate turned to face her best friend, her stomach clenched along with her teeth at the sting of rejection. What does that even mean? You paint fantasy, which does not denote authenticity. I don't know, Maggie. She absolutely refused to elaborate or explain it anymore. She said it was for me to discover. She did say that if I found my authentic inner artist to let her see the pieces, then she would consider me for the exhibit. She's still a few weeks away from making the final decision on who gets the spot. What are you going to do? Kate threw up her hands. I have no idea, Megs. I have no idea what it means to be more authentic or paint with more authenticity. Right now, I kind of hate that word. You'll figure it out, Maggie replied with full confidence as she flounced on the couch. Easy for you to say. You've made a name for yourself. Kate hated how surly her voice sounded. Her best friend was a talented sculptor with a loyal following who sold her pieces before they were ever done. She worked hard to be where she was, but she made it look easy, and sometimes Kate felt jealous of her best friend. Maggie looked at Kate and held her gaze. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to lash out. I didn't mean to lash out. I just want this so badly. Kate dropped her shoulders. I know you do, Kate, and you'll figure this out. I have faith in you. Maggie leapt up from the couch and gave Kate a side hug before skipping down to her room. Do you need to use the bathroom? She shouted down the hall. I've got a date with Damon, and I need to get ready. The Damon? Kate asked. When did he finally ask you out? He didn't. I got tired of waiting, so I asked him out for sushi. Sometimes you need to take the initiative in life rather than wait for the universe to deliver. Kate mulled over Maggie's words as she walked down the hall and stopped in her doorway. Arms crossed, she looked at her room through a different lens. 4 empty white walls, beige carpet, a faded purple comforter wadded up on a single bed she'd had since she was 12, a battered $25 dresser from the thrift store pushed against a wall, and an old yellow sheet covering her window in place of an actual curtain. Her easel occupied a corner next to a TV tray covered with tubes of paint and a pitiful collection of her most used brushes. It felt stark and bare compared to her aunt's. Maybe if she had a place like that to paint in, her pieces would be more inspired. Kate's eyes widened and her pulse raced, whether in exhilaration or fear she couldn't say, as an idea took shape. She wasn't taking any classes this summer, and she only worked part-time at the restaurant, which meant she had some free time. Her mom refused to step foot into her old childhood home, and there was no one else nor any other family, so she could, in theory, use her aunt's space to paint on her days off with no one the wiser. It would take her mom months to go through the courts to have Aunt Esmeralda declared dead and sell the house and land. It was the perfect plan. Nothing could go wrong. Nothing. Mind made up, Kate changed into her favorite jammies, crawled into bed, and fell into a restless sleep filled with nightmares that faded in the morning light. And that was chapter 1.
They always end before I'm ready, and I'm like, "Wait, that's it? That's it?"
Oh.
And I'm like, "Where's the unmute button?" Yeah, I'm always caught off guard by that. Probably because I listen to audiobooks, and in an audiobook, like, they just keep reading, and I'm like, forget. I get into that zone, and then I'm like, "Oh, wait, this is an
Right?
interview. We're only doing an excerpt. This is not." So, yeah. Oh, all right. So
Oh.
she's gonna. So I'm guessing that she's gonna find that door when she moves into the house.
Oh, she's going to find a lot of doors. She's going to read about doors. Yeah. So it's
How's she
very,
gonna keep her mom from knowing that she's doing this? Doesn't sound like her
oh,
mom would be too
yeah.
happy. So there's
No.
some
And her mother is,
shenanigans.
yes. And this book is filled with complex family relationships between Kate and her mom and her sister, because her mom is very manipulative and controlling. So
Oh,
that's part of the book too. So you have to read more to find out what happens. It
that's
is the
hard.
first book in a planned series. So,
That's always hard when like
mhm.
I mean, but what mother-daughter relationship is not complicated?
Right. Especially
Even
at that age. And it's just,
yeah.
yeah. Hmm.
I think even the best, even the mothers who have the best relationship with their daughters, like there's never not going to be like some tension or something that mom would wish you didn't do, or that you
Hmm.
would wish your mom would do or say or feel, or
Yeah. And I've kind of
yeah.
come full circle. So I know, as like, when you're that age, you kind of think everything is black and white and that
Mm,
they're just making decisions to make decisions. But then as you come across the spectrum and you're older, you can look back and be like, well, no, like, people usually make decisions based on past experiences and feelings, and it's not just black and white and cut and dry.
I mean, sometimes
Or
it is. Some-
sometimes, yeah, but
you
yeah,
know, like
in the book, it's not.
yeah, but it takes like time to recognize it, that they're not, so because no one is, everyone is a product of their environment, their upbringing, their experiences,
Absolutely.
and sometimes
Mhm.
it seems black and white to you or to your parents, is not to the other person. Like, they may be
Right.
judging it based on factors that you're not even aware of.
Mhm.
But yeah, as you get
Absolutely.
older, like you can look back on and be like, okay, they didn't let me go to that concert, and I understand why now. I mean, I may still not agree with that decision, but
Yeah,
in hindsight,
you
I
can
get it.
understand it a little better.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So so she's an artist.
Yes, she is.
It sounds like she's a
Mhm.
good one if she's dealing with, if she's trying to pursue this in any capacity, which is neat.
Yes. Yes,
Art's
she has
hard.
no confidence, but she definitely is a very talented artist that runs through the family. So, her mother does not agree with her career choice and doesn't want her to pursue it. But yeah, no, it's a running theme throughout the book is the art.
I think as authors we can understand that, because like
Hmm.
it's not it's not a career that has like an obvious paycheck. Like there's not an obvious route to success, whereas getting a corporate job, you go there, you get a paycheck, you get benefits, like much easier for
Yes.
parents to comprehend, and you have some kind of
Hmm.
stability. Like, but with like anything in the arts, yeah,
Yes.
I get it. You know, I definitely get it.
Hmm.
It's definitely not easy to make that a career, but I'm glad
No.
people do make it a career somehow.
Hmm.
I don't know how they do it, but I'm glad they do. Or we wouldn't have any arts to experience.
Right?
But yeah, it's got to be tough.
Yeah.
But yeah, all right. So she's gonna find the door, and
Hmm.
so when she goes into this other world, it's like a epic fantasy type place, like a second world fantasy somewhere that's not Earth, right?
Hmm. So they're when she finds out her family comes from a long line of travelers, and they can actually see like these glimmers in the air that lead to other dimensions, to other planets. So, and it's unlimited. It's not like just like the 13 dimensions like it is.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's my world, so I said it's unlimited. So,
Yeah, why not?
yeah, exactly. So when she reads the journal and reads about her aunt's travels, it's actually her aunt that went through the door to Trilesk. And that's pretty pivotal to the storyline. I don't want to give too much away, but
Right.
yeah, but there's something that happens there that's pretty central to the story. So,
Okay.
but yes.
Is there any?
So yeah.
Go on.
So yeah. So there's lots of different doors that lead to different places. So it's not just the door to Trilesk. I just picked that because it was the central to the story, but there's more doors to more places.
We like more doors to more places. That sounds like a good thing.
Yes.
Doors are fun. So in these places that she's going, so there's magic, magic creatures, magic places.
Yeah. So the door to Trilesk is filled with energy beings. There's a lot of different of the worlds out there. Then you have Jeprama, which is like a playground for the rich and wealthy. It's a city it's black on the outside and cold, but everybody's inside the buildings. That's pretty central to the story. There's quite a few different that I don't want to say. You'll have to read.
Okay. So
I just don't want to give away too much.
Okay, and you said it's a quick read. It's not like it's not a long book, so we don't want to give away too much. Okay,
yeah, it's only like about 220 pages. So
okay, so then is it a series? Is it standalone? What's out? What's available?
So this was my debut book that came out March of this year. You can read it as a standalone, but it is the first in the planned series. And the second book should be coming out March of next year. I also, through my newsletter, have a story about one of the side characters once a month. It's like a really short story, and it's like a year-long story that's intertwined through there. So that's through my newsletter as well.
Okay. Cool. All right. So the next one's coming out. This is what's here now. No, that's awesome. So all right. So then she's going to meet people in this other place. Do you want to talk about them? I know you don't want to give away too much. I'm not sure.
So she meets the housekeeper in the house, which is chapter 2, that she had forgotten about, who is Mrs. B. So she's one of the girls there. Maggie is her best friend. She's pretty supportive as well, and important in this. There are people that her aunt had met, and that's in the journal, which describes like there's a rescue and there's, a kidnapping, that her aunt saves people in there. So there's a whole list of characters in that environment. The powerful creature that rips through the sky. There's a lot.
Okay.
There's a lot of characters, and they're not specifically just from one dimension. They're from all over.
Okay, so we've got, and so it sounds like she's going to go to multiple places in this book, not just to Trilesk.
So Kate, this whole book is about her trying to save her aunt.
Mhm.
So it's only she doesn't end up going through a whole bunch of different doors in this book. Her aunt has in the past, and that's part of the story as well. Like I said, it's part of the journal that's in there that tells the aunt story. But Kate has to find the door to her aunt. That makes
Okay.
sense.
So her aunt is, like, trapped or
Yes, so her aunt is held captive in another dimension. And she's held captive because she has information that only she knows that could end all the worlds. So it's up to Kate to try to figure out, first of all, like how to go through these doors because she's never been through them before. She has no training. She doesn't know how to do this. So she has to discover how to get through the doors. And then she has to find out like where her aunt is being held. So it's like a whole mystery thing as well.
Oh, gotcha. Interesting. How many books are gonna be in the series? Do you have, like, a planned out
I
like a
am a pantser, so I
mm,
do not
you do.
know anything until I sit down and start writing.
Yeah, it's kind of like, "Alright, characters, what do you wanna do today?"
Right? Yes, they tell me what to do. So um, I it's probably going to be at least three. Yes, at
Okay.
least three. So
So at
yeah,
least a trilogy.
maybe more. Yeah. And then I know that there's the side characters, they have their stories to tell as well. So the whole universe is going to be a lot of different series.
Oh, okay. So there'll be other series that, like, branch off of this with the side
Yes.
characters. Do
Yes,
we
because
meet
they have
those
their own stories.
Okay, do we meet them in this
Yes.
book or
Yes. Yes. But again, I
Cool.
can't tell you too much about it.
Okay. Okay. So you're working on book 2 right now.
I am. I am.
How far along are you?
Oh, geez. I just started it, so like I said,
Okay.
I just did this book in March of this year. So then I took a little bit of time off because I just, how book launches are and
Mm.
trying to learn everything and all that fun stuff. So
Yeah,
I
and then after a
just
while, you're like, "Well, I'm gonna do these things because yeah, I like those things, and maybe we don't do the other stuff."
right.
'Cause you
Right.
you do everything when it's your first book, and then you kinda realize that the everything
Oh, it burns you out.
and a lot of it, like, isn't gonna do much anyways. It's just you're doing
Right.
things for the sake of doing things, and you
Yes.
eventually pare down to, like, okay, what are the things that actually, actually get my book in front of readers and help me to find the right readers, and then you just kind of do those things and just kind of don't do the other things.
Right? Yeah, because you
You're
can
just
spread yourself
like,
really thin, like,
"Eh."
that is yeah, yeah, so I had to pull back, and that's when I was like, "Okay, what is it that I really wanna do?" And it's like, "I just really wanna write." So, that's when I started writing the newsletter story, like I said, about the side character, and then, the second book I started to write, so
And that newsletter story is so if they sign up for your newsletter, they can read that right now, that newsletter
so
story.
So the newsletter story is just I came up with a story about the side character and I divided it by 12 and it's going out once a month. So it's like a continuing story throughout the year. So it's not something that
Okay.
they just but it's just every time. So my newsletter is sent out twice a month. And then the first newsletter of the month, that's the one that has the story in it. And it just
Okay.
continues every month along with the story.
So at the end, is that story gonna go like, will they be able to get it on retailers?
It'll be like a novella. Yeah.
So if you miss a part, you can get the whole thing when it's done.
Yeah. Absolutely. And if people miss parts of it, I will always send out whatever they have missed. I don't want people to miss out on it.
Okay. That's
Yeah.
pretty neat.
Mhm.
So you're doing book 2 and that story, or you've already written
Yes.
that story for the
That story
side
has pretty much it's almost done. It's 3/4 of the way done, so
Cool.
yeah.
Cool. That's really cool. So you're going to finish that newsletter story and then go hard and heavy on book 2, or?
Yeah, that's the plan.
Makes sense. I mean, some people
Right.
can write multiple whips at the same time. I sometimes can.
I can. And I'm trying to see like where the newsletter story intersects with the second book as well too, because I wanted to have some connection. So
yeah, I can only do it when like I know both of them, when I know exactly what's going to be going on in them, and it's just sitting down and putting the words down, and then I can just go back and forth and back and forth. But that's not. And then the characters will do something and be like, "Okay, why does he do that?" Now I don't know. Now I don't know what happens next. I had it all figured out, and now I don't know what to do.
Right.
And then I have to like, okay, concentrate on just one and not work on the other one until I've gotten them back into like a groove. And I'm like, all right, I know what you're doing. You're good. And then they go off script again. And I'm like, God damn it.
Right? Why won't you behave?
Right?
Yes.
I don't know. Is there anything else you want to say about the Door of Trilesk? Door to Trilesk.
It is a Spiff box entrant. So if any of your readers are following that, they can follow along.
Why don't you explain what that is for anybody who doesn't know?
So that is, Mark Lawrence started this contest, like this is its 10th year, so 10 years ago, and it's for indie authors, and it stands for Self-Published Fantasy Blog Off. And what happens is you have 300 entrants into this contest, and they are divvied up between 10 blogs. And then the 10 blogs go through and pare down their books down to one finalist. And then between the 10 blogs, they all have one finalist. And then out of those 10 finalists, the finalist is picked. And that is a year-long contest that we're still in phase 1 of. So they're still, the blogs are going through and trying to figure out who are their semifinalists, who they want to push off to the finalists. And that's what that contest is about. So I've been waiting to hear from my blog about who's going through. So I have not heard back yet. So we'll see.
Yeah, I did it 1 year. So it's.
Oh, did you?
Yeah. I think it was last year. I think I did year 9. But yeah, you just kind of have to just check every week to see if there's some, because it's people are doing this in their free time, reading them and doing the reviews. So you just check once a week, and see if yours is one of the ones mentioned. It goes all the way to May, or you can just like wait till May and then check in and see who got what.
Well, the first part of the phase ends in October. And usually by now they'll start saying like who's being cut. Mm-hmm. So that's like I'm obsessive. I'm obsessively checking the past day to see like who's been cut. And my blog has not said anything yet, so that's why I'm just trying to be patient and keep following. So, but it's exciting to be part of it. And
that's awesome.
Yeah, and then it's also, if anybody is in the Indie Fantasy Addicts Facebook, my book for the Summer Reading Challenge, my book checks off a couple of the different adventure wheels. So if anybody still needs to read for the Summer Reading Challenge,
let's read this. Still
pick it up. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Very cool.
Yes.
Awesome. Thanks so much for coming on here, and we'll have links to all the things in the usual places. So
thank you for having me.
You're welcome. And I guess that'll do it for this episode. We'll be back with another fantasy author, another fantasy book soon. So make sure to like, subscribe, follow, all the things so you get notified. And thank you, Shannon Holly.
Great. Thank you.
Have a good one. All right. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.